you have a team that is doing things at their wide receiver position that you think maybe the 49ers are about to do as well.
Well, I went home yesterday and I was thinking about this Brandon Aiyuk situation, and the contract is unsigned, and I can't help but think about what is going on in the NFL. And we all know that it's a copycat league. And we know that in the NFC, you've got a small handful of these young gun coaches, from McVay to Shanahan to Matt LaFleur in Green Bay. And it struck me what Green Bay has done. A couple of years ago, they traded Davante Adams, and they got picks back. I think they got a first and a second back for Davante Adams. And what they have done in Green Bay is they've gone about systematically drafting young receivers and tight ends and going with a youth movement. Christian Watson drafted in 2022. Romeo Doubs, a fourth rounder. You know those names because I like the pick and I like the player. They've gone on to be good NFL players right away. Last year, they took Jaden Reed. They took Tucker Kraft at tight end. They took Luke Musgrave. 3 of their first 4 picks were at that position. Then they took Dontavian Wicks in the 5th. They even took Grant Dubose in the 7th, who hasn't played. But the point is, they have taken their draft picks and they have rat-a-tat-tatted wide receiver and tight end. And so I look at Kyle Shanahan, and what has he done? Well, this year, he drafted 2 wide receivers, and he brought in an undrafted free agent tight end into camp. Last year, they took a tight end. It feels to me like Kyle Shanahan is looking at Green Bay and thinking that might be the template for how they go about that position, those positions in the future, because Kittle is getting older and Debo's making $28 million, and everyone thinks that they're going to cut him at the end of the year. I don't know that they will, but they might. And Brandon Aiyuk remains unsigned. So if you want to be like Green Bay is going to have to pay Jordan Love very soon. And they're going to pay him probably $50 million, somewhere in there, a year. And Green Bay's kind of gotten ahead of the curve with these young, talented wide receivers and tight ends on rookie deals to get ready to pay their quarterback.
Well, and you say maybe the Niners are looking at Green Bay, and I'm thinking, well, maybe actually, because there's obviously connection between those coaching staffs. I don't know if they're looking at each other. Maybe that is just philosophically how they have felt all along. It doesn't mean you won't pay a wide receiver at the right time. The Niners have already done it. They did it 2 years ago with Debo. They may well be about to do it with Brandon Aiyuk. Would they do it for both? I vehemently believe they will not pay both. But what Green Bay is doing, and you fall into this because they were doing this before they even knew Jordan Love was any good. You didn't know at the beginning of this last year if Jordan Love was really that guy. I'd argue week 6 of this last year, you still didn't know that Jordan Love was that guy. And then, boom, he took off. And you're like, all right, Jordan Love is that guy. So now what's Green Bay doing? You just named off all the receivers they picked. I'd argue that 4 of them have hit. So in consecutive drafts, Green Bay has got 4 wide receivers who are playable at a high level in the NFL. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, and Jaden Reed.
Yeah.
And so what are those 4 guys now doing? Because 4 wide receivers, you know what that means? At minimum on almost every play, almost, not all, but it's very rare you're going to put all 4 on the field at once. These guys are sitting watching a lot of football. Like, none of them. We like all of them, and none of them are going to get picked in the first 3 rounds of your fantasy draft because there's too many of them. Now, I know people may be real excited about Jaden Reed. He popped last year, but Green Bay is playing wide receiver survivor, and they've got all kinds of time. Hey, 4 guys, who wants to be good? Who wants to be the 1,200-yard receiver? Who wants to connect really well with Jordan Love? Who wants to work with him in the offseason? Who's going to be that dude? Glad you're all here. We got 2 years before we even need to think about this.
Right.
Let alone act on it. And that will work out well for the Packers because I think it keeps all 4 of their motivations all the way up as high as they can go.
And yeah, you get to the end of their contracts, and then you can decide who you want and who you don't want, and how you can work that. And also with Green Bay, they do a lot of 11 personnel. It's good to be back talking personnel groupings, but the 11 means 3 wide receivers. The Niners don't do that, so they don't have the same need to have 4 good receivers in the fold. But you did draft Ricky Pearsall with first-round capital, and that tells me that you're thinking, okay, Ricky, 1 year, let's see what you've got. You can be our wide receiver number 4, and you can, spot Brandon and spot Debo if he happens to get hurt, and then we'll see what we have with you, and then we can make a decision from there.
Absolutely. And this will play out every year. So the 49ers are much further along in this Green Bay comp because they've already got a receiver who's been paid, and they have another one who is obviously in a situation as we speak with Brandon Aiyuk, and now you've got another early draft pick, top 40 draft pick at that position who you are going to reboot the clock with in Pearsall, and then there will be others that you sprinkle in. Obviously, Juwan Jennings remains a 49er. You mentioned Cowing in the 4th round. There was some good buzz about him early. We'll see if that turns into a player or not, what have you. There are some other guys, obviously, in camp as well. So you're constantly, it's just like any position, quite frankly, but there's so many more of them, and it's so talked about because their public and their market is popping since Tyreek Hill. Over the last couple of years, the market has really, really changed, and I wonder if what that all means, and the reason we bring it up is that the 49ers actually, I'm not going to say they don't want to extend Brandon Aiyuk right now because they've offered it to him. So I'm sure they want to extend him.
Yeah.
But it's not a must. It's not an absolute have to do it because the 49ers are probably thinking, dude, if you just play on your 5th-year option, that kind of creates, at least in the near term, a situation that we like, which is A, we get more information. Does Debo do a healthy year? Does Brandon do 1,300 yards again? Pearsall gets a year. Let's see what he can do. Another year for Purdy. Let's gather all the info. And while we're gathering the info, all of you wide receivers are freaking out playing wide receiver survivor. Who gets to stay on the 49ers? Therefore, it keeps their motivation all the way turned up to the top.
Right, and as long as Brandon can get over the fact that he has to only play for $14 million, which might be a little bit of a blow, and it might be a struggle for Brandon Aiyuk. And so far, what we've seen from his TikTok and his now request to be traded doesn't seem like that he is built for this, as you said on our show thread last night. I got to say I'm built for this.
That's my concern.
Yeah. Is he built for this?
My concern is
I can honestly say I'm built for this.
My concern
I can honestly say I'm sort of built for this.
I can honestly say it sort of feels like he's not built for this. And that's my concern. Niners, not a concern. Situation, we see it every summer. Concern, Brandon. I don't know if he's going to react the way the Niners, and quite frankly, he is going to need to react.